Well, we're in week 2 of our legacy study. Last week we had a great week as we kind of kicked off looking at how we lead a legacy. We looked at the Shema. This week we're going to be looking at the spiritual legacy that we leave. And of course I have Kim Eskridge with us, our pastor to children and women, and Pastor Don. Again, I appreciate you visiting with us. Kim, you have an important ministry in the life of our church. And when we think about legacy, we think about what are we leaving to children and to our teenagers and the generation to go on. So Kim, what are some ways you have seen people of First Baptist invest in the children of our church?
I have seen people coming in Sunday after Sunday, teaching our children from birth all the way through 6th grade and beyond, of course, into our student ministry. They're preparing each week, and then they're coming and really just loving these children and teaching them God's truth and doing that really in a sacrificial way.
And Don, you often say that the children and youth are our most precious gift, and I know you have very high standards on how we are teaching and leading them. And so what are some ways you've seen First Baptist people kind of pour into our youth spiritually?
You know, we ask often when we have baby dedications, we ask the congregation if they will do their part. And Kim, as you've talked about what they're doing with children, it continues on in many of the same ways. People who teach faithfully every week and work with our students that help Michael and the great ministry that he has going. And then their mission trips, and we have adults who go along, and they're sponsors, and they're right there with them. The church gives a tremendous amount of money to help send our students around the world, literally. And our First Baptist of Alexandria Foundation provides scholarships because we want to continue that investment. You know, after they graduate high school, we want to let them know we still have something we want to contribute to them. I often say we leave the light on for you so that you know, no matter what happens at the university, your home church loves you, and we're going to support you all the way.
Definitely. That is so important. Well, this week we are going to be studying through 1 Timothy chapter 6 and 2 Timothy, the first part in chapter 1. And of course we look at that book and we see the investment that Paul placed into Timothy and the spiritual legacy he left to Timothy, which then Timothy spread through the grace of his ministry. Kim, in 1 Timothy 6, it says this: pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness on a daily basis. What does that look like for you?
For me, is in people that maybe touch my life, or how do I personally act?
Sure. How do you personally act to pursue that godliness and faith and endurance on a daily basis?
Well, that's a very high standard. Of course, finding personal time in the Word, because I can't do it on my own, asking God to help me to do that. And then looking to others that He's placed in my life as examples, such people such as you two, and there are other pastors and other leadership in our church as well, and then people that I've known all of my life that have touched me. And in the beginning of 2 Timothy, Paul points out that Timothy has been taught these things from infancy. Specifically, he mentions his mother and grandmother.
Right. That's a key role. And Don, also another verse we're going to be looking at is 1 Timothy 6:6, and it says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Basically, you know, we come into the world with nothing, we leave with nothing. Why do you believe that God encourages us to be content? And what kind of spiritual legacy does a spirit of contentment leave?
You know, if you pursue money, that'll only take you so far, or power or fame or those things. But to be content means you're at peace. You're at peace with yourself. You're at peace with God. And I love being around people who have found that contentment. They're not trying to earn their standing with God. They understand that's all by grace, and they receive it. And we really don't need to earn one another's love. Because we are Christians, we love each other.
That's a great point. You mentioned other Christians, and we're talking about spiritual legacy, so I got you both. I have to ask, can you give me the name of somebody who invested in you spiritually, Kim, and who were they, and how did they invest in you?
It's hard to really just choose one person because so many people have touched my life. But I guess if I had to pick one individual, it would have to be my father and the example that he set in my life and the way he would take time, even though he was working 3 jobs many times when I was growing up, he would still set aside time to talk about life in general, but also especially the things of God, and to just model that before me. And he was actually the one that led me to Christ.
Great. And Don, how about you?
Well, pastors have had a great influence on me, and I could name several pastors, but it's interesting. The people who made the most difference early on were staff members of my home church. When I was a kid, I wasn't interested in coming to church. My parents had to drag me there, and my mother, I think it was concerned that she was losing me, that the church was losing me even as a 12 and 13-year-old. And she conspired with the minister of education, interestingly, Brian, and they gave me a job in the church. And it made me feel so special, so important, but it drew me in. And then there was a minister of music and youth. That was the combination that was common in those days, music and youth. And he wouldn't let me go. He invited me to things and encouraged me even when I wasn't interested. And finally, getting me there, God worked a miracle of grace in my heart. So I look to those folks who invested in me.
That's great. Well, teachers and leaders, I know that there have been people who've invested in you spiritually throughout your years. And this week, as you stand in front of your classes, you're going to have a chance to invest spiritually into your classmates, whether you're teaching our youth or whether you're teaching adults. And so it's our hope and our prayer this week that you'll be able to teach strong as we look at spiritual legacy. Thanks again.